myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and as always on Thursday night I'm joined by Supermac and John Gibson. How are you, lads?
Good.
Well, Steve,
good.
thank you.
Good to see you both, and it's nice to be back live. I had last night off, of course, because I was at Newcastle United's ground, St James's Park, sampling an atmosphere which is probably reserved usually for Sunderland fans. There was only 10,000 in the ground, so that I now know what it's like to be a Sunderland supporter in a huge stadium. But I've got to be honest, it was great to be back in the Gallagher end, just amongst Newcastle fans in a safe COVID restriction environment, but still being able to support the team, clap the team, sing a few songs to the team, see a win, which was important, and just sample it all. And I've got to be honest, lads, I had a real lump in my throat and a tear in my eye when Local Hero played and the lads came out, because I think it was just a reflection of something we all take for granted, being able to go to the match, and to have that taken away for best part of a year is something I certainly won't take for granted again. And it was just great to be back inside. And I don't care how dilapidated the place looks, at the moment, and how poor the team is, and how awful our manager is, and how greedy our owner is. I'm a Newcastle fan. I always will be. And it was just nice to be back at my second home. So, for me, it was resounding success. Well done to Newcastle United on how they organised it. Well done to the security staff who did everything in their capabilities to make sure that it was safe and to get everybody in to the ground safely, and essentially to make it a good atmosphere. And the fans did that bit as well. Superb, throughout, as you would always expect. And wonderful experience, and looking forward, hopefully, to going back in August with everybody who is in the chat and people who watch the show. When we have a capacity, hopefully, of 52,000. Let's hope we'll get back to that. John, we might be a COVID-free zone, but we've got a virus on Mal's computer again, which has struck early, so he hasn't even got He got good evening out of his mouth, and then he's off again. So the dog needs letting out. John, what was your take on seeing fans back in the ground last night?
Fabulous. I honestly think it was the best part of the night. I mean, you being in the ground, Steve, sampling the atmosphere, being dead grateful to be there, would enjoy the evening, and to a certain extent that probably covered what I felt was a very average display by Newcastle. But for you wouldn't see it that way. Being back in the stadium was all important. And to me, the best part of the match last night was the fact that there was fans in, because we realised so much what we'd all missed. Not just you in there, but, the fans that have had to watch with the television. I mean, the idea on the television of the sound effects to make it seem like a crowd, is like the canned laughter you get on the comedy shows, where it is just not real, it's not natural. And I mean, just the small things, Steve, like referees getting booed when they make a decision and give a free kick to the opposition, which is debatable, and they get some stick, and you get the usual chants and the usual thing. It makes the game what it is, and we knew what was coming, because I enjoyed the FA Cup final, not because it was a great story of Leicester winning the cup for the first time ever, but the atmosphere that was created, and it was exactly the same here. And the noise, and there was only 10,000 in. When there's 50,000 in next season, and pray God we are back to normal next season, that's going to be wonderful. But one of the things that I found interesting towards the end of it is, looking back, Steve Bruce sort of indicated that perhaps near the end, the players were apprehensive defending a 1-0 lead, because the crowd were transmitting that feeling to them. And I was also told, was Newcastle United nervous because there was 10,000 fans there, and I haven't been used to that this season. If Newcastle United players get nervous because there's 10,000 fans there, or Steve Bruce wonders the reception he'll get and the players will get when there's 50,000 there, then get out of town, because this is these are Premier League players playing for a Premier League club. And if they're going to be worried about 10,000, they should think what it's like with 50,000. But I think that the good players, the San Maximin, Willock, the Dubrovka, Wilson, when he's available, are going to be lifted by a crowd, by playing in front of a crowd again, because it's horrendous just hearing each other shout to each other, I would suspect, as players. The best part of the evening by far, apart from Willock scoring yet again, which was staggering, 6 goals out of 6, 7 since he come to Newcastle. Not only has he been here only half a season, but he's a midfielder. Newcastle forwards can't score goals like that, and this guy is a midfielder. So outside of Willock's goal and a lovely cameo, I thought, by San Maximin, who was the real excitement of the night when he was on the ball, the best part of the evening were the fans back, without a shadow of doubt. So Takeover, Steve Wraith, fan supreme last night, star man of the whole evening. There you go.
Thanks. That's high praise indeed, John. Malcolm, we discussed it prior to the game. When would we see fans back in? It was, like I said at the start, it was great to have fans back in. What was your take sitting watching it on TV? I take it the fans came across loud and clear.
Oh, they certainly did. Yes, and you knew that it was live, that it wasn't sort of a pre-record fan noise that was coming out of the tannoys. That it was amazing that a ground only a fifth full should create such an atmosphere as they did. I found myself thoroughly enjoying the game for the atmosphere, which I haven't been doing now for months. And I think you could sense with the players that they were reacting more to that it wasn't so much like a practice game in an empty stadium anymore, and it was bringing maybe not the best, but certainly better out of them, and I include Sheffield United in that, because I thought they played quite well for a side that have been relegated, and they certainly had their chances as well. But it was a joy to watch. Thank heavens. I hope that we can keep it going into next season, that we don't have any more health scares to knock it all sideways again.
Yeah, fingers crossed it's the beginning of the return. We seem, for me, I mean, we're not doctors or government officials, but it seems as if we're going into some kind of period of herd immunity now. So, I've got high hopes that we will be back to that stage. So let's see what happens. Performance-wise, Mal, John wasn't impressed. He said the fans were the best thing of last night. Would you agree? I mean, it's different when you're sitting at the game. I've got to be honest. I mean, now I'm not having to watch what somebody else wants us to want to watch. I can watch what I want to watch sitting in the ground. That's the big difference. And I was really interested in watching Willock. I was also interested in watching Matt Ritchie. And again, Matt Ritchie didn't let me down all the way through the game, cajoling, having a go, having a pop, encouraging, doing everything right. Definitely a captain's performance again from Ritchie. Shelby, not so good. Wasn't one of his worst days, wasn't one of his best, probably one of his standard average performances. Willock was outstanding. What a player he is. The work rate he put in. Probably just as much as Almiron did last night, running around the pitch, harrying, chasing, great engine on him. ASM last night for me. I'm getting really annoyed at the amount of times he goes down injured and then is motioning to the bench about wanting to come off. He's getting kicked from pillar to post. I understand that, but he seems very, very intent on coming off if the going gets tough, and it's a quality I don't particularly like in him, But I just thought overall, we were playing the bottom of the league team. We should have been 4 or 5 goals up in the first half. We took our foot off the gas in the second half and could have easily had a sucker punch, but wasn't a great performance. I wasn't expecting to go and watch Brazil at St James's Park last night, and I didn't see Brazil. And for me, I enjoyed it. But John said, when you went off there, that it's probably because I went with the intention of enjoying myself. It was the first game I've been to in a long time. What did you see, Malcolm, on the pitch?
Well, I'm still not sure about the way that Newcastle are playing at the back, where they've got 3 at the back, but then they pull the wide midfielders back, and that has them playing at fullback, whereas they are both excellent crossers of the ball, but all too often they can't get there. Fortunately for the goal, the lad on the right, he did get there. And by heavens, what a superb cross he sent in for Willock to score from. Absolutely beautiful cross. And so I don't know whether it's a work in progress, this 3 at the back, and let's pull the midfield players back to play at fullback. And again, there is one thing that I like about Willock that others don't seem to have, and that is the ability to completely ignore Shelby. He's able just to ignore him and get on with his own game and not let Shelby dictate and spoil things for him. And Shelby will do that. He's done it with other midfield players, but Willock, he just gets on with what he feels is the right thing to do, and he does it extremely well. Puts a lot of effort into the game as well. And I don't know if you notice, but when Shelby has got somebody there in midfield with him who doesn't give a stuff about Shelby just drops off, and he can make it very difficult for a lot of players around in the side. What you need is a midfield that pushes up all the while, and that encourages the back line to push up and get us as far away from goal as is possible. And that means that the opposition, when they do get the ball, they're a long, long way to travel to get to the Newcastle penalty area and goal mouth. I suppose people say this is my favourite subject, but believe me, it really isn't. But I'm finding it now. I'm finding it such a bugbear. Joe Linton is not good enough to play in the Premiership. Quite simple, and it doesn't matter how long they give him, how much work they do with him. He is never going to be of the quality to play in the Premiership. And so this summer they have to do something about it, and the best thing they can do is take a loss and move him on, because why Steve Bruce continues to keep playing him when it is not doing the side any good at all, and it's a vital position where he plays, and Newcastle are getting nothing from him, nothing at all. Can you remember anything that he offered as a plus to the Newcastle performance? Anything at all? You were there, Steve.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, the only thing that stands out for me before he went off injured at half time was a diving header that must have gone about 40 yards over the crossbar from a very good position to be able to finish, and didn't manage to. But you know what I found interesting last night, Stephen. I know you would slightly disagree, because being in the stadium was just a wonderful experience and a huge plus. And what I thought was fabulous was all the fans went there to support Newcastle United. They didn't go there to hammer the team or to hammer the manager or whatever. They wanted Newcastle to do well. They were willing them to do well. They were grateful to be there again. But the nagging doubt I had about the game before the game happened, guys, and it's the same nagging doubt I've got for Sunday when we play Fulham, who are really a replica of Sheffield United. They're already down. They can knock it about a little bit, but they cannot finish and score goals to save their lives, and neither can Sheffield United. And so we're facing a very similar sort of side on Sunday. Now, I think, and this sounds absurd in some ways, but I think Newcastle are more geared to playing the good sides. When they played Leicester and hammered them for 4, when they played the champions Manchester City and scored 3 against them, they had quality sides who come on to them. And when we got a turnover, we were willing to attack them direct pitch at pace, using the pace of Willock and San Maximum and Almiron, and that suits our game. But when we played sides that are already down, where the onus is more on us to dictate the pace of the game, the creation of the game, where we are responsible for carving out chances, not on the counter, but on the front foot, we do not possess enough playmakers, and I'm emphasising the playmakers, to give the forwards a chance, because Willock isn't a playmaker, he's a box-to-box finisher, and by God is he good at it. San Maximum, yes, can create the wonderful ball he gave to Murphy for Murphy's great cross. He can do it. But outside of that, we haven't got a Terry Hibbert, we haven't got a Tony Green, we haven't got a Kabai, we haven't got the creative. And when the onus is on us to dictate the pace of the game and the direction of the game, we haven't got the locksmith that'll open up sides. And we've got to buy that this summer, because you can have Wilson standing up there and you can get somebody else as good as Wilson to be with him in terms of finishing. But if you don't get somebody to roll them in with chances, Wilson played at Sheffield United when we lost 1-0. We've got to have midfield creators that are capable on the ball of unlocking defences. And I think, Malcolm, I think that's what we lack.
You can't put them in the same side as Shelvey. That's the problem.
No.
Well, you replace Shelvey.
Absolutely, John. I totally agree with you. But Steve Bruce has made Shelvey captain. Now that to me is a statement of how Bruce is seeing Shelvey. He's seeing Shelvey in a completely different light to the three of us, I think. And he must like what Shelvey is doing. Shelvey is he
keeps picking Joe Linton as well, Malcolm.
Well, I know,
Joe Linton as well,
and it's all through the middle, John.
Yeah,
it's all through the middle. That's the problem. And what you want is a midfield player who is looking to get forward and support forwards, and let the other midfielder make runs. Willock, in the case last night. But did you see Shelvey looking to play Willock in? I didn't see that happen once. No, I saw Shelvey dropping onto the toes of the centre halves.
It strikes to me something we've discussed with you before, Malcolm, in the sense that certain players, if they've got a bit of a thing with another player, don't pass to them. You've said this to me before, or the overhit a pass to make them look bad. And I wouldn't be surprised if Shelby's a bit jealous of Willock.
I could quite imagine that being the case. I really could. But what it needs is somebody to boot Fernandez up the backside and say, get him pushed forward. Get Shelby off of your toes. Get him pushed up and then see what happens. But it seems that the back line are happy for Shelby to keep dropping right off from that central midfield position and almost become another centre-half at times. And so Fernandez, I think he's a good, experienced head on the shoulders of a very good player. But he's got to boss Shelby and not be bossed by him. Because that's what Shelby does. He looks to boss players. Yeah, sorry, Steve, go on.
So if we are going to make any improvement next season, Malcolm, and my big concern, come Sunday, that's this season put to bed. My big concern is that if the takeover doesn't happen quickly, and it probably won't happen quickly enough, we are going to start next season with Ashley as owner, with Bruce as manager, and with the same squad basically, and looking to buy what Steve Bruce has called Bosman players, which is free transfer players. Our summer's work is going to be free transfer players and on loan players. If is going to make a progress,
right? Are you saying
decisions
that,
have got to be made, which means I'm saying, well, the tough decisions, Malcolm, is things like you've got to get Shelby and Joe Linton out the team. You've got to sign a top-class striker to go with Wilson and a midfield creator, and you've got to get Willock, come hell or high water, to stay at this club. And you've got to stop signing only free transfer players. What did free transfer players get us? It got us Hendrick and Andy Carroll. We've got to stop signing players from... we've got to stop signing players from relegated sides because they're cheap or they're grateful to come here. We've got to raise our eyes from being on the floor to being on the horizon and get people that'll improve this club. We don't. We've stopped doing that. It is ludicrous. I tell you what, everything I'm preaching now, I'm not expecting to happen, guys, this summer because I think we'll go down the same old road.
Yeah. And, you know, it's been quite frightening listening to Steve Bruce talking about bringing Bosmans and free transfers in. How depressing is that, for heaven's sake? And I think he's saying it just to prepare everybody for what's not going to happen in the close season.
Yeah, it's worrying times for Newcastle fans at the moment, and obviously we'll be covering it throughout the summer on NUFC Matters with me, John and Malcolm, no doubt giving our views over the summer holidays. Big shout out to the sponsors, as always, Spider VPN for your internet security. They've been with us for the last 4 months now. Big shout out to the lads there. Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of your search lists and get them to protect all of your internet and stop people nicking your account numbers and things like that. Also, a big shout out to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. And just so you know, lads, the Bee did get christened last week by the supporters on the chat on Friday, and he's called Sir Bobby.
Sir Bobby B.
Sir Bobby, yeah, very good, very good. Big thanks to qtechshop.co.uk,
Lovely.
makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Walls and Newcastle. They are going to be announcing a big event, a big summer event on tomorrow night's show, so stay tuned for that tomorrow. And a big shout out to Jab Signature as well, their new range coming out very shortly. And tomorrow night, of course, 5:30, I will be back with the A team, the three amigos. Join me, Steve Hasty, Neil Mitchell, and Keith Patterson from NCSL to give us a bit of a takeover update from his side of things. It was good to see Steve Hasty and Keith Patterson giving up their time on the food bank last night, collecting some much needed funds for the food bank, and great to see lots of people going over to see them and to speak to them. Very, very nice that. Okay, we'll try and get on to some of your questions for the last half hour, and plenty of questions coming in as well. Tom Dixon, good evening. He says, question for Malcolm and John. Do you think we'll sign Joe Willock in the transfer window? He's scored 6 goals for us now. Darren Cowan also says, Willock will cost us 30 to 40 million. Without the takeover, he's not coming to us. It was interesting to listen to the lad last night. He gave a nice interview. I mean, obviously the first place and to hit 6 goals in a row since Cisse and Shearer. For me, big player. And said that he would keep his options open, but coming to Newcastle wasn't out of the question. What did you make of that answer, John?
It's a diplomatic answer, and it's a correct answer from his point of view, because he's in the driving seat. Funny thing is, Steve, the more I watch what's happening at the moment, and the more I see Willock score these goals, and the more delighted I am to see it, the more I realise how tough it is for us to get him. Because if you're the Arsenal manager, you would think, I've got to keep this guy. He has scored more goals than all Arsenal midfield put together. So, if you're Arteta and you've got anything about him, he's going to keep him. He's going to play him in the pre-season friendlies and then make a decision on him, which is far too late for us. If he's going to sell him, because he has a rush of blood that he can get all these superstars, but he needs cash. If he's going to sell him, each goal Willock scored, bless him, is put a note at the end of his transfer fee. And the other worry is that our other clubs who are in a better position than us, top 10 clubs, for example, those in the top 10, going to be alerted by his goals from midfield and bid for him, as opposed to us, who are down in the bottom 6. So every goal that's gone in, it makes it more difficult for us. I think if it was only down to the boy, which it infinitely isn't, it's down to his club, then the boy has got a lot of warmth for Newcastle United. But do you thinking about it, guys? How many midfielders score as many goals as Willock scores? How many forwards score as many goals as Willock scores? We haven't, outside of Rondon and Perez and Wilson, who haven't scored, who only scored between 10 and 12 a season, and this guy's got 7.5 a season. How many forwards scores goals as Willock? I mean, he is a very precious commodity. And Malcolm is 21.
Yes,
he's going to get better.
He is, John. Yeah, but if Newcastle had been shrewd when they arranged the loan with Arsenal, what they would have done in the agreement was had a transfer figure specified that if Willock wanted to stay and Newcastle wanted to keep him, then the fee was X number of millions, and then let the player decide. But I'm not so sure that Newcastle have thought ahead that much and have come to that kind of an arrangement, and therefore you hear all these different figures being bandied about. I saw a viewer made the comment of 30 to 40 million. I've seen the figure of 20 million. I would hope that Newcastle have got it prearranged that if if they want to continue the situation where they sign Willock on a contract, then the fee is already negotiated some 4 or 5 months back.
Yeah, well, let's hope
you're
so.
right, Malcolm. It ought to have been, but it hasn't been. It hasn't.
Oh,
been.
you know, it definitely hasn't been, John.
It hasn't been. No, it hasn't been pre-negotiated at all.
That's
so
amateurish.
we are open. We're open to what Arsenal want the fee to be, and that's why I was saying that every goal he scores puts another note on the end of what the fee is going to be. This sounds ridiculous, guys, but we've got two hopes here. One hope is that Arteta believes that he can get superstars, and he needs to get some money to get those superstars. And how much is he going to make on certain players? Louise, I think, is on a free, etc. So he might have to sell Willock to get the money to buy the ones he wants.
Yeah.
Then we are in a situation, if it's 30 or 40, or certainly 30 million, say, we've only paid 40 million. It's around that fee in our whole history. Will we pay that this summer? I honestly believe that probably wouldn't, because it's not in Ashley's interest. Ashley's thinking, I'm going to sell this club in September or October, and I don't need to have Willock here to sell it, so I'm not going to pay 30 million for Willock. My hope, and it's a sad hope, is that we get him because they did it and think he might still become a good player, but we'll wait and see. So they'll put him out for another year on loan. And if they say to him, go out for another year on loan and see how you go and get even more experience, I think his first choice to go to would be Newcastle, because he's got a love feeling about Newcastle. He's got it about the dressing room. He's got it about the fans. He knows they love him. They made that clear, Steve, when he was doing that, when he was brought off. They made it clear how much they love him in the way they did with Rafa, if you remember way back. We want you to stay, the same chant. So in some ways, probably our big hope of getting him is that we get another year's loan. It ought to be that we buy him outright. But my worry is, will Ashley, if the fee's 30 million, say, if the fee's 20 million, will Ashley say you can spend this summer between 20 and 30 million on one player? I hope so. I don't believe it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. An interesting summer. The takeover is key. We'll come back to the takeover in a second. Chris Collins is just asking a question. He says, "I'm intrigued to know how those who were at St James's Park found the stadium. Has it been tidied up at all, or is it looking rough? Some images broadcast by the TV didn't look great." And he sent us a photograph on my phone. To be honest, it is a bit of a mess. Is the only way to describe it compared to other stadia that you walk around. I'm pretty depressed really when I see St James's Park these days. It needs a major overhaul. But like Malcolm said about Willock, he's not going to want to spend money on a player, and he's not going to want to spend money on tarting the ground up if he's leaving. So we're stuck with it until the takeover goes through, or not, as the case may be. So we wait with bated breath as to how things go with the summer. Swag Dog says, "Evening fellas, what are your thoughts on the latest delaying tactic that are being deployed by the Premier League with a competition case? Also seem to be dragging their feet over arbitration." And Alan, again, takeover related, says, "If the takeover fails, this could be our future with only 10,000 fans in the stadium and in the Championship, with Ashley still being the owner. It's frightening and it's depressing." The takeover, again, in the headlines, Malcolm, because there's been documentation has had to come out about the various cases which are ongoing, and I think we seem to be reaching an end game, Malcolm. It's not clear which way, the dice is going to fall, though.
I couldn't agree more. I have no idea what the football authorities are actually doing. Are they still trying to upset the takeover, or are they for it now? I don't know. And it seems that nobody's saying anything at all from the football authorities, and everything is hanging on them. And what they did way back, I thought was one of the worst things that I've seen in football, in the business of football. That how dare the footballing authorities, whose job it is to make football strong, they seek to stop a club from becoming much stronger. Why? Because 6 clubs said no, we don't want it to happen. I thought that was I thought it was absolutely disgraceful, and there's not a head rolled, there's not an inquiry taking place, there's nothing happening. It's as if, oh, now we can get away with all of that, and it makes me worry for the game itself. Whether it's Newcastle or anybody else, I would be seriously concerned. But of course, being here in the northeast, following Newcastle, I'm deeply aggrieved at the behaviour of footballing authorities towards this club, and they have got this summer to put it right, and I hope they damn well do.
Yeah, I mean, John, it's interesting, to see, some of this stuff come out now. I personally feel vindicated for at least being positive about the information that I was picking up, because it shows that the takeover has been fully operational behind the scenes. And ultimately now, we're reaching an end game. I'm not a betting man, but I would still say that I'm quite confident that, if everything comes out in the open, that we might get what we want. I think the Premier League seem to be trying very hard to delay things again. However, I don't think they're going to get away with it, because it's reached a level now where they're not in control anymore, and they are being told this is when things have to happen. So we're going to get a result either way, and I think at least we'll all be happy either way. Then, we want to be the richest club in the world who's challenging for honours every year. But if we're not, at least we know we're lot, and we know we're going back into next season with Steve Bruce, Mike Ashley, etc., etc. And at least we'll be able to plan correctly and hopefully avoid the pitfalls of a relegation battle this year by investing correctly.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The biggest hope we've got is that the pressure's now on, and a decision has to come along. And it could well fall our way. Ironically, after 14 years, absolutely being in a straitjacket on Mike Ashley, to a certain extent, he's the biggest hope we have now, because he's turned his guns on the Premier League and onto that situation because he wants out. So he wants this all to happen. And yes, you're absolutely right, Steve. Your persistence often perhaps scorned because nothing appeared to be happening has proved to be correct, and good for you on that. And I think we have a real chance on this. But because these things, Steve, take so long to reach fruition, they don't take long in the terms of big company deals, but they do in terms, the close season is very short. I think whatever happens, the deadlines we've had, June and July, etc., we are going to virtually have to waste this summer in terms of transfers, etc., because by the time a takeover was in place and the new people were, pray God, inside the boardroom at St James's Park, the pre-season will be over. Now, if we waste this pre-season, and Ashley will waste it, what Ashley wants is what he's just got this season and last season was survival until he sells the place. So we won't buy the players to improve the club this summer unless the new owners are in place, and we need them in place next week. We need to actually, once Fulham's out the way, be physically buying people in to make next season much better than this season's been and the previous season's been. So I think we're going to have to bite the bullet in terms of this summer yet again, and yet again in your free transfers and your on loan, look to survive until the takeover happens sometime during the early season. And the best opportunity we are going to have is going to be the January transfer window.
Yeah, sad but true. Keith Rose says, what do you think of Ryan Fraser being called up to the Scotland Euro 2021 squad despite his fitness concerns, Malcolm? Do you think he'll play a blinder at the Euros?
He always does. As soon as he puts the Scotland shirt on, all of a sudden he's a different player. And what he did to Bournemouth, I'm amazed that this club even touched him. It just showed a complete lack of professional character for me, what he did at Bournemouth by refusing to play. And he might not have said it, but I think he's refused to play here as well for most of the season.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a strange one, isn't it, Gibbo?
It is, and I agree with Malcolm. Fraser has hugely disappointed me. A lot of people have disappointed me. Shelby's disappointed me. Joe Linton's disappointed me. But I wasn't surprised they disappointed me. I was expecting it. I was hoping, not expecting, more from Fraser. We had the ones about, as Malcolm said, about what happened at Bournemouth. But he hasn't scored a Premier League goal for us. When I've seen him play for us, 9 times out of 10, he's looked as if he didn't want to be here. His body language has been absolutely shocking. And what are we faced with now, whether deliberate or it is genuinely because of injury? Facts are facts. The last time he played football was for Scotland. The next time he's going to play football is for Scotland. And he said when he played for Scotland the last time, and he did well for Scotland, he says, well, you do well when you have a good manager that you run through brick walls from. He wasn't talking about Steve Bruce. He was talking about Steve Clark. And miraculously, he come back from that game injured with an injury so bad, and I'm not suggesting for one moment that it isn't authentic, but an injury so bad he's been unable to play for us again. But all of a sudden, he's now training and he's going to play in the Euros. Now, what's the odds that he gets in the Euros and misses the pre-season for us? Now, I'll tell you something. This guy pre-season, but didn't have one last pre-season. Steve Bruce has said this, and Steve Bruce is right on this. This guy needs a pre-season big time. And what he's done here, for me, has been a massive disappointment and a massive condemnation of Ryan Fraser. And if anybody owes this club, then Ryan Fraser is the player that owes this club, without a shadow of doubt. I've been more disillusioned by him than by anybody, to be truthful.
Yeah, I would agree, John, 100% with you on that. Donald Baines and a few others asking what our thoughts are on Jetro Willems coming back again. I mean, this was this was talked about last season. Obviously, would he be coming back? Well, this season, early this season, would he be coming back once his injury healed up? Is it a player you'd welcome back with open arms, Mal, or should we just move on?
Move on. I'm always dead set against players coming back for a second time. I think I can only think of one case where it actually succeeded a second time round, and that was Peter Beardsley at Newcastle.
Well,
came back for a second spell.
Funnily enough, I've got another one for you, because we talked about this on the Retro Show a couple of weeks ago, and it's Mark McGee's birthday today. But he was another one who, so happy birthday to Mark if he's watching. But Mark McGee didn't have such a great time first time round at Newcastle, but in the second time, of course, he came back and almost led Newcastle to promotion. Ended up in that playoff semi-final, where they got beat over two legs against Sunderland, of course. But Mark McGee was another one. He had a good second spell.
Right, you always get your exceptions to any rule.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, and
that's exactly.
But it's not worth taking the risk in the first place in the hope that you can have an exception to the rule.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that hopefully covers that question for you. Don't know. Go on there, John.
The thing that worries me about Williams, and I can understand fans loving the guy because he was big-hearted. He scored that super goal, if you remember, at Liverpool, I think it was. And, we've looked as if we need a left-back because Dummett is more left side in the 3 or even in the 2. And Richie's not an out-and-out left-back. Of course he's not. Although he's a very, very, very good player. The thing that worries me was above the fact that when you come back, you're never quite as good as you were the first time round, is that he had a bad injury. And I don't know, but I would like to know, and Newcastle United ought to know if they're serious about thinking of bringing him back, because they ought to be watching him, seeing what's happened. Has he overcome that injury, and is he as good as he was originally, or is he going to carry? And because we've seen players with injuries who, after the injury, Mike on, when he was at Liverpool, lightning quick, off the last shoulder, gets injured, never the same player again. It happens that way. And I don't know how fit. He can be physically fit, but whether it's taken a yard from what's left in Williams. The old Williams was a good player by Newcastle standards and worth having. This Williams, it would have to be investigated before any signing was made.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. Fitness is another thing which has come up in the chat tonight. Mal, a lot of people saying, what about the players' fitness? It should be held to account. A lot of people don't feel the players have been fit enough this season. Would you agree?
Well, I have to say that I've been surprised at the amount of days off that Steve Bruce has been giving them over the past few weeks and months. I've not particularly noticed a strong absence of fitness in the team. Of course, when players haven't played for some time and they come back into the side, like Fraser, when he came back in, he hadn't played for ages, and he looked like that. He looked exactly that. Somebody who was rusty. And rusty and dusty he looked, and it wasn't working for him, and so but in the main, I'm talking about players' fitness. Good heavens above, Richie can't do more running than he's doing now. He gives his absolute all every single game, and so I'm not sure why the subject is even coming up, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. What's your take on that, John?
About?
Yeah.
Sorry, take on what, Steve?
We're just talking about players and the players the likes of Willems, etc. coming back to Newcastle.
Yeah. Sorry to cut out there, mate. Fitness with Newcastle.
And fitness as well. Yeah, sorry, John. I was going through the questions. The fitness of the players was the other question. I was just trying to find the question.
Exactly. Fitness of the players was what you were on about. I'm not certain, like Malcolm, that has been a consideration. For me, the big thing that is produced this little mini upsurge in results that we've had of recent times, which is take Newcastle away from, the fear we had midwinter when we played 11 games and lost 9 and drew 2 and won 2 out of 22. And we were absolutely desperate. And Steve Bruce told us that is because we didn't have our wonderful players up. And he was referring to Sam Maximum and Wilson, etc., etc. I believe that is that was a myth, because if you looked, there was 11 horrendous defeats in which Wilson played every one of them, and there was 4 horrendous defeats when Wilson and San Maximum played every one of them. The big difference was that Newcastle United tactically suddenly stopped being timid, stopped being scared of their own shadow, and start trying to go forward. And all of a sudden, a squad that looked nowhere near Premier League level actually looked as if they were. And I give huge credit there to Graham Jones that said we must play on the front foot. In Newcastle United, if you look at them at Leicester, if you look at them way back at Everton when Jones first come, if you look at them against Man City, albeit with a 35-year-old third-choice goalkeeper in Aki, who on the day was absolutely diabolical, we were front foot. And if we're front foot, we're not a good side, but we're a much better side. We were playing so timid in that winter period, which went on for so long, when we lost at Sheffield United and drew at West Brom and got hammered by Brighton, etc., etc. What changed things was not having our 2 guys up front, but we had them up front before and they never saw the ball. What changed was tactically we become different. Tactically, we played 15, 20 yards higher up the pitch than we had been playing. We had been playing inside our own penalty area.
John, what
Is
the
that
difference?
Right, Malcolm?
Yeah, what the major difference was that back in this period that you were talking of those 11 games, that what Newcastle were playing was Shelby at centre half and 5 sweepers.
Yeah, I tell you what, Malcolm, if you were the goalkeeper, you had sore toes because everybody was standing on them.
Absolutely. But it literally was like that Shelby was playing that deep, and the back line dropped right off. And yes, they were stood on Dubravka's toes, and that was when Wilson up front, dear me, he didn't have a black and white shirt within 50 odd yards of him in those games. And it was a dreadful, uncomfortable period for him. And he went goalless. So it didn't take a genius of a coach just to get the team pushed up. For heaven's sake, it was so obvious. And how it got to that, you've really got to question Steve Bruce, for heaven's sake, him and his coaches. What were they doing to allow it to happen? And after the game, scratching their heads, oh, well, we've lost, but we don't know why. Everybody was saying, get pushed up, for heaven's sake.
Yeah. 5 minutes left. Paul Oxley will give you the last question. He says, Malcolm, if you were Harry Kane, who would you join and why?
Without a shadow of a doubt, I'd go to Man City. I think Harry Kane would be a perfect fit in there. It would suit him down to the ground. He would suit them down to the ground. And I think that he would strengthen what is a most magnificent side. And particularly as they're losing their current major goal scorer. I think Harry Kane would be a perfect fit. I couldn't see him wanting to really go anywhere else in this country. If he is to move from Spurs and stay in this country, Man City.
Gibbo, could you see him in a black and white shirt?
I was going to say, if I was Harry Kane, I would sign for Newcastle United, but that's because I'm a Geordie. And by the way, he would become a bigger hero at Newcastle United than he was at Spurs if he actually signed for Newcastle. But no, in truth, I would sign for Man City as well if I was him, because he's got one move left in him. Time-wise, this is his last big move. And I would go to Manchester City for all the reasons why. Because the only other place that might have an outside chance would be Liverpool, but they've got the front three, etc. I wouldn't go Manchester United because I think that's a bigger rebuilding situation we realise, and I think in some ways they've overachieved this season already, and they've got Cavani staying there. I would definitely go to Manchester City, but if it was up to me, I would go to Newcastle United, because what is the club of number 9 legends? Ours, me old pal. Ours.
Exactly. Following the footsteps of Shearer. Break Shearer's record at St James's. Come on, Harry. You know it makes sense. Julie Baker says, Rusty and Dusty Malcolm, we should sign them. It was a comment you made before, Rusty and Dusty.
It was a comment.
We should sign them on. Okay, quickly looking ahead to the final game of the season. Fulham away. It's at Craven Cottage, of course. All games kick off simultaneously at 4 o'clock. Newcastle's is live on Sky Sports Mix. Fabian Shaw is available after completing his suspension. Team news will come in due course. Referee for the day is Chris Kavanagh, and on VAR is Robert Jones. And it's another Malcolm MacDonald derby. Fans are going to be allowed in the ground as well, Mal. Of course, we had our supporters in St James's Park last night. Fulham will have some supporters in. 2,000 home followers will be in Craven Cottage at the weekend. How do you see it going, Mal? Is it going to be a typical end-of-season affair? Do you think Fulham will have something to prove? How do you see it going? Newcastle, of course, went down there with Rafa as manager and won 4-0.
Yes, that's right. That was 2 seasons ago. Last game of the season. I was actually down there for the game. And Newcastle were so superior in that 90 minutes. Fulham's major problem has been that for all the lovely football that they play, and they do play really good football, they get to the last third and they haven't got a clue. Not a clue. And I would be hugely disappointed if Newcastle allowed Fulham to score, because honestly, they really just haven't got a clue. I tell you what, I've been watching Fulham quite a bit, and people have been talking highly of Scott Parker, who now manages Fulham. And when Scott Parker played for Newcastle, he got an award, I think, for the most passes in a season. Yes, sideways and backwards, sideways and backwards. He didn't play a forward ball. And if you watch how Fulham are playing now, they find it so difficult to play that killer ball into the last third. And they've paid very severely again this season, as they did 2 years ago. And as far as Newcastle are concerned, I just hope that they have got their shooting boots on, and they need to just keep getting forward and peppering the goal with shots. And I'm going to take Newcastle to win 2-0. I cannot see Fulham scoring, and they'll play some really good football, but not score.
Okay, John, what's your views on the match of the weekend?
Well, honestly, I will not know for certain until an hour before kickoff, because for me, Newcastle's best 4 players this season have been Wilson, Saint-Maximin, Willock and Dubravka. We know that Wilson's out. Saint-Maximin and Willock both came off against Sheffield United, and Dubravka finished the game with his left hamstring strapped. Now, if Saint-Maximin, Willock and Dubravka missed the game, it would be a totally different game to what it would be if they were all there. I think Willock will probably be all right. I think in the main it was cramp and it was fatigue, but Saint-Maximin, you never know. He comes off regularly, as Steve was saying. We don't feel beat. Dubravka has a problem with that left eye. He's got the Euros coming up. Does he feel that he wants to risk the Euros, etc.? Bear in mind, we haven't got Darlow if he doesn't play, because he's had an operation. So Gillespie would have to make his Premier League debut. I think that whatever happens in terms of starting with Saint-Maximin, Willock and Dubravka will have a huge impact on the way the result goes. I know that they came up here and got a 1-1 at Christmas up here when they were the best team, and for 25 minutes played with 10 men when Anderson was sent off, giving away the penalty, which Wilson scored to get us the draw. I know that in the last game they got another 1-1 at Manchester United. But let's not get carried away by those 2 results. The bottom line is that Fulham are as bad as Sheffield United. They cannot score goals, and that draw at Manchester United was only 2 draws in the last 9 games, and the other 7 they've all lost, which is why they're going down. But you know what? I've got this funny feeling that we were uncomfortable against Sheffield United in terms of we couldn't put the game to bed, and eventually won 1-0. And I don't know what. I mean, Newcastle ought to blow these people away and end up with 2 games at the end of the season against relegated sides that produce 6 points to us. There's no question about it all. But for some reason, Malcolm, and I don't know why, I cannot get away from thinking that the bottom line, the nightmare result, is that we get a 1-1, and they do score, but it's a 1-1. And I can't get away from that, you know. And yet I know Newcastle ought to win by 3 clear goals because they are so bad and they can't score goals. But if Willock doesn't score for us, if he doesn't, and after 6, can we ask a midfield player if it's 7-7? Willock doesn't score for us, who's going to score 2 goals for us with Wilson not playing? It's really a game that is end of the season, isn't it? I mean, it is a game where it's no open bubble.
Score prediction, John?
1-1.
1-1. Okay, good stuff. Martin Heron, we'll give him the last question. He says, do you think Joe Linton would give Kane the number 9 shirt, Mal?
What's happened to Malcolm? Yeah, he lost his voice.
Classic. Great.
And we could think,
Dear me.
we could
Do you know?
think that Joe Linton's not. We could think he's not here, Malcolm. Have the decision to make me also.
Honestly, I think we honour Joe Linton by putting him in the same sentence as Harry Kane.
Great stuff. We'll be back with Malcolm and John next Thursday. We'll be doing a season review. That'll be next week's topics. We'll be doing a season review with all of our usual regulars. So, lads, have a great weekend. Enjoy the last games of the season and look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Take care.
Look forward to it. Good night, everybody.
Take care, boy. Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in